fitness movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all at one place, zorfitness.com.
What's up, everybody?
Hi.
I'm going to apologize for my voice. I ate too much yelling yesterday. Pretty much happens every time I do anything. So, my lunch and learn topic, little less sciencey than Days, but we're going to be talking mindset. So she did kind of a background, so I guess I'll do the same. So a little background on me. Currently, obviously, I work for Ben with Zor, but then I also work for a company called Station Athletics. We have 5 going on 6 CrossFit and what we call CrossFit Light locations in northern New Jersey. So we just opened our 5th in January. And we should be signing the lease for our 6th location in the next week or two. So basically our yeah, what's that? Yeah, no, so we do, it's CrossFit, just no snatching and clean and jerking. So we do back squats, deadlifts, bench press. So all your major lifts, so sound, strength and conditioning, just no muscle ups or snatching and clean and jerking. So we'll have 3 of each of those.
No like Metcons, or is it more stations?
Yep. No, Metcons. Yep. So we'll still do things like toes to bar, pull-ups. We'll still do, all that stuff. Yep. So sound, strength and conditioning principles, but with a little bit lower barrier to entry. Ironically, guys, it's really hard to find good coaches. So we found that it's a little bit lower barrier to entry, but that's a whole nother separate topic. So I do that. I met Ben pre-college and during college. We both wrestled at Messiah. So he was coming in as a freshman as I was leaving. I think I could take you. I think I could take you. No, what? Well, definitely now different weight classes, because
A number of people that I wrestled that were at least as tall as Chris, and I'm like,
What did you wrestle senior year?
157. Senior year was 165.
Okay, so he was heavy. I was 157 as a senior. So
I haven't seen that since grade school.
yeah, but yeah, so got really used. I mean, but what did you walk around at?
Like 75.
Okay, so I walked around at almost the same and dropped to 57.
You had to cut.
I was 172.
What did you do? Just water us the warm?
Wow.
Run with garbage bags?
Yeah, you got really used to going like this. But I did it in a I'm sure you had guys on the team that would come in on Monday 12 over and have to lose that. I didn't do that.
I was always 10 overall.
Yeah. I usually came in around 64, 65. But you get really good at just kind of like the ebbs and flows of weight, losing your water, and then cutting out some calories, and then rehydrating and refueling. But again, a whole nother separate conversation. But that's kind of my background. So mindset's something, guys, I got really into. I think started to explore during college, but a lot post-college. And a lot of that was around the fact that I felt like I had some certain strengths around wrestling, but then some certain weaknesses. And a lot of where I started going into this journey was around wrestling, because it's a very lonely sport. You have a team, but it's one guy by yourself against another guy. I can't tell you how many times, we were just talking about cutting weight, we would wrestle a tournament on Saturday. Sunday, I'd take my textbook, I'd hop on a bike with sweatpants on and ride for an hour. And I would study and ride a bike to make sure my weight didn't get too high. And you're by yourself. So it kind of gets forged there. But again, I think if I was to look back at my wrestling career, I think athletically there was a ceiling, and I don't think I got there because of weakness in my mindset. So a little bit of a mindset background. Growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Anyone ever hear of the book Mindset by Carol Dweck? Have you read it? Really good. If you haven't read it, highly, highly, highly recommend you put it at the top of your list. So essentially, I think she pioneered the concept growth versus fixed. I could get that wrong, but she definitely popularized it. So growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Growth mindset is that things can change, basically the phrase, an old dog can't learn new tricks would fall under a fixed mindset. Okay, so fixed mindset, people think there's a ceiling on everything. You can only learn so much. You can only do so much, whereas growth mindset, people are kind of the opposite. So I gave the examples of, man, I did not execute well in those chest to bars would be growth mindset because it's being honest. Things did not go well, but they isolated it to the one instance versus someone who might say, I'm just not a gymnastics person. This is now mapped onto who you are as an individual. You're not good at those things and you're never going to be. That's a fixed mindset. All right. So that's one concept. Another concept I go over a lot with people is, I can't tell you how many times I've used the phrase to my athletes, control the controllables. I think we even did a whole podcast on controlling the uncontrollables. And this is something where in CrossFit, how many times have you been in a competition, and it might have even been you, and you're in the corrals and you just hear people complaining about their judges, the lane they're in, the weather, things, my shoes are too tight, like just the wildest crap that has nothing to do with the fact that you got to do squat cleans and pull-ups. Nothing to do with it, right? And at the end of the day, it's honestly kind of a freeing feeling that if you are going to focus on controlling the uncontrollables, how little is actually in your control. And I tell my athletes, you are in control of your attitude and your effort. That's it. And if you can control these two things, especially when you get onto the floor, then when you get a no rep or your monitor doesn't work right, instead of throwing a royal fit and the workout going directly down the tubes, you're able to just say, okay, I had no control over that, but I can control the way I react to it and control the way the effort I put into the rest of this workout. And those tend to be the people that win workouts and win events. And then, like I said, not in your control, the weather, the lane you're in, how long you wait in the corral, that's a big one, right? If you've ever been at a big competition, you warm up, you get a sweat going, and then you stand still for 20 to 30 minutes.
A perfect example is like the people who went in like heat 2 today.
Yeah.
In the first session, they all got cold before they went.
Yep.
I was okay with it because it's like that's all happens all the time.
And you guys, just to call Ben and Sam, I know you guys did Fittest Experience this past year, and that's a tough one. I did that a couple years ago because it's not only are you getting cold, but it's actually just cold out. So, I've competed not at Wadapalooza, which not that hard to stay sweating. It's in Miami, Florida, all right? It was 78, not 80 degrees. You go to Fittest Experiences in Texas in January, it was 32 when we woke up. I literally had to go to Dick's Sporting Goods and buy clothes because I was so friggin' freezing the whole time. So learning how to deal with that and realizing, yes, it's cold, and yes, it's less than ideal. But I don't know if you know this, everyone else in the corrals next to you is dealing with the same exact thing. And so if everyone is dealing with the same exact thing, it's an even playing field. So learning to realize that and deal with it accordingly.
That's super helpful for me is like, if I'm in a situation like that that's crappy, I always think like, rather than like, oh, this is crappy, I'm like, if I feel this way, what are other people thinking?
Right.
And like, I'll be able to handle it better than they can.
Right. Another one is observing versus judging. So are you able to simply observe certain outcomes or emotions without there being any judgment behind it? So essentially being able to observe the situation and saying, this is what it is, without saying, this is what it is and it's bad, right? So like Ben said, if he has a situation that he thinks is crappy, right? Being able to say, man, it's cold outside. And that's the extent of it. And actually training your mind to just realize it's cold outside and that doesn't have to mean anything negative is super helpful in building a strong mindset. And then being process-oriented versus outcome-oriented. Personally, this was one I really struggled with because athletically I had certain goals I wanted to achieve, and I got really good at not riding the highs and really good at riding the lows to the depths. So it's it's really easy to say, fall in love with the process, right? But it's really hard in execution. But for the folks who are able to do this and not be tied to the outcome, it's super helpful. So I don't know if you guys, he's got a lot of information on this out there. Kobe Bryant has a lot of stuff around falling in love with the process. And not only do I like some of his stuff because he spoke about it, unfortunately, is that every story you hear about the guys, he lived it to a T. Was that he was in the gym at 4:35 in the morning, just executing, playing basketball, because that's literally just what he wanted to do, and focused on a phrase I use a lot all the time, is just getting 1% better every single day. So that's kind of the background in terms of a lot of the stuff we look at, or I should say I look at with my athletes. And then some of the stuff here, I'm just gonna go through it real quick. I'm gonna try to bring it all up, is where do you fall? So the first step into building that mindset, or building a strong mindset, is accurately assessing yourself, just like we do with training. When Ben and I get a new athlete, the first thing we do is test you guys. Because you can say like, oh yeah, I could do X, Y, or Z. Without having a full battery of where you're actually at, we don't really know where the training is supposed to go. So, like I said, do you have inflated self-talk during the highs and very negative self-talk during the lows? That's one thing to look at. And then some of these phrases are ones that I know if I've used, but I snuck in some ones that aren't necessarily bad, but they're kind of hidden. So you have to kind of realize that. So self-assess. Are you someone who says, crap, I feel so nervous? Or, man, I suck at this. If I would have had a different judge, I would have won that workout. I just don't have the timing of the snatch down yet. This weather just has me feeling sluggish today. My body is beat up, so I'm going to do what I can. And I'm definitely a little nervous about this workout, but I think I have a good plan of attack. So again, some of these are actually not necessarily bad phrases. Some of them are. Curious if you guys can point out the ones that are not necessarily bad things to be saying to yourself. The last, I heard a couple things. I heard last one and last two.
I think last four.
Number 2.
So, some of them are pretty good. I like to draw a correlation between the first one and the last one. Both these people are nervous, right? This is recognizing it without judgment. The word crap brings in judgment. I'm nervous and it's bad. Everyone's nervous going into a workout. I got news for you, all right? The best CrossFitter in the world, I don't know if you watched any documentaries on Matt Fraser and how he threw up before almost every single workout. He had nerves, and he won 5 games in a row. So this is not necessarily a bad one. This is a good one. I personally don't like this one, because you're kind of giving into an outside factor that's, again, outside of your control. But this one's a good one. And I'm gonna go over it, but the power of the word yet. Because basically when you admit, I don't have the timing of the snatch down yet, a lot of people think that having a good mindset means ignoring the things that are true. And that's not a fact at all. Because if you actually do that, then when you are faced with the reality, it actually can be more detrimental. And so just be honest with yourself. Yeah, I don't have that down yet. Where if you cut the word yet off, it's a cemented statement. I don't have it down, and it could start to build that fixed mindset that you're not going to, but yet opens you up to the fact that it could come at some point.
And I think too, like, it's specific, you're talking about timing, so there's like awareness there.
Yes.
Too. Like, you're doing a self-assessment.
Yes.
So like, I think that's positive too, right?
For sure.
It's not just open-ended, it's like, hey, it's this one thing that I know what's wrong and I'm gonna work on it.
For sure. Cool.
So like, athletes in any sport, but especially our sport, because like, you can really have some major weaknesses and still, like, they're gonna take time to develop the best people. So it's like being completely honest with the fact that like, this is not where it needs to be yet, but at the same time, like, wording that in a way that's like encouraging you to continue to get better at it, and the fact that like, I can continue to improve in this thing.
For sure.
You just want to continue to orient yourself towards seeking improvement, even in being real about the fact that like, yes, this isn't where I need to be yet with it.
For sure, and I know this is something Ben and I have talked about, and I don't know if any of you kind of fall into this camp. I find that this is super important in our sport, especially for folks who maybe struggle with gymnastics, because those are movements that you do the same friggin' drills day after day after day after month after month after month to maybe hopefully get it in 6 months. Whereas with lifting, I could do a back squat progression and make this incremental difference of a 5-pound PR and feel on cloud friggin' 9, right? And it could have taken 6 to 9 months to get there, whereas I could take 6 to 9 months to do ring muscle up drills and be this much closer to a ring muscle up, but I don't actually get it and it feels like a complete failure. So I find that in the sport, those are the folks that really need to work on this, because it can be really, really hard to not get that stuff. Especially when you got people like Ben who probably did it first time he tried.
Not the very first.
It was the same.
All right, so how do I improve my mindset? The first one is reps. So doing certain things to improve your mindset. It's just like training. If you don't work on your mind just like you would any other muscle, you're not going to get better at it. One of the things that I've done in the past is writing down the thoughts you have. So you'll be in an emotional moment. Just start writing down those thoughts, and that's it. Because guess what? In that moment, you're not going to fix the problem. There's too many emotions involved. You're too mad or too frustrated. I've been so mad that I've been ready to punch a hole in the wall. Nothing's getting fixed at that point in time, right? So being able to essentially, I'm blanking on what the exact phrase is, but thinking about your thoughts. So writing them down, what's that?
Metacognition?
Yes, thank you. Asking yourself what is going through your mind, and then assess your answers at a later time when the emotions are removed. And then being able to recognize when doing that over time, guys, is going to help you to recognize when those thoughts pop up again. And then you're going to be able to train certain mantras or things to say to yourself to revert those thoughts. Develop calming mechanisms. We did breath work yesterday. That stuff I know I have used to calm in the past. The box breathing, I know from reading and looking at things, the Navy SEALs will use that to calm their nerves down in high stress situations. And those are people who are sitting in sniper nests looking to kill people like Osama bin Laden. So if they're using it to calm their nerves down, I think if we're nervous about a snatch, we could probably do the same thing, right? So learning to box breathe, and if you wanted to really try this, if you wanted to take 3 to 5 minutes to do it, not right now, take your heart rate before and after, and you'll actually see that number drop. And so doing stuff like that when you feel yourself getting nervous or anxious or starting to get to a heightened state than you should be, utilizing those tactics to bring yourself down, because what that does, to be a little sciencey, is brings the blood back to what's called your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that does cognitive thought and problem solving. When you're in a fight or flight, stuff pulls away from that because your body thinks you're trying to survive a tiger that wants to kill you. We haven't had one tiger here, so I mean, I haven't. Last I talked to Ben and Stacy, no tigers, so we don't need to feel that way. What was that? What was that?
Came in a dumper.
We've had some intruders.
Oh, okay. We talked about this, but learning to use the word yet is super important. Looking at everything as feedback and an opportunity to learn. So again, just to reflect back on myself, when I was wrestling, I was really good at taking a failure and reflecting it internally without realizing it and saying that I was a failure because I failed. Not great. Don't 10 out of 10 don't recommend. So being able to use it as, again, being honest, I failed in this instance, but that doesn't mean I'm a failure, and taking the feedback of where did I go wrong and how can I improve upon that to be better going forward, puts you in a problem solving mindset as opposed to a very negative mindset. This is also a big one, super straightforward, is don't complain. Anyone ever been around someone who you would say is a complainer? That's their way of communicating, is to walk into the office and be like, you should hear about the weekend I had. Personally, this guy. Yeah. Personally, I recognize is like what that does for me is it brings my entire mood down. And now I'm in a bad mindset. And so realizing that complaining does nothing and realizing that sometimes people who tend to complain behind the veil of venting. I'm just venting. No, bro, you're complaining. So you know what? Why don't you do me a favor and take that somewhere else? All right?
Don't vent by yourself.
And then this is a tactic I stole from a therapist, is using the term "so what." So saying a phrase like, "Man, I'm really upset about how session 3 went at Zor camp," and she would say to that person, "So what? What came of that? What does that do for you?" And what that does is start to unravel the underneath judgment of that statement. I'm really upset with how session 3 of Zor camp went. So what? Well, because, I was trying to learn a new movement. I was trying to do those pullovers, and I was really struggling, and I was the only one struggling in the entire group. So what? Well, because I was the only one struggling in the entire group, it made me feel like a loser because I couldn't figure it out. There's the judgment thought. And so she was really good at helping people just dig down, 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 down until you get to the judgment thought, and then realizing, like, is that really accurate? No, of course it's not accurate, right? And so being able to then undo that and then ravel it back up is going to allow you to remove some of those emotions when something doesn't go well for you. Now, I know a lot of this stuff is like, can come across as like woo-woo and like a lot of internal work. Yeah, it is. But I know for folks who want to do some of the things on this page, it's super important. It's the great separator, all right? A cool head means more points, better results, more fun, and an overall better life experience, all right? And for me, I can speak to it very directly because I know that happened to me. Like, I know I've seen in competition people who lose their crap and people who are able to, stay the course. They're able to score more points and do better in the workouts. They're able to get better results. For me, this was also a big one. At the end of the day, guys, like, this is supposed to be fun. We're, by general society, kind of weird because we put ourselves into physical pain for fun, but it's supposed to be fun. None of us are getting a paycheck because we're doing snatches and clean and jerks. It should be fun, and that's what drew us into the sport in the first place. Wow. I saw Ben, big check. He hasn't even deposited the big check yet. It's just sitting there. Dad joke. Anyways, so it should be fun. And when you're losing the fun, then it starts to feel like a job. And when it starts to feel like a job, you start missing sessions, you start making excuses for why you don't want to go into the gym. So if you can develop this mindset, you can truly learn to have fun each and every day. And if you're doing those things, you're going to get better results over time. An overall better life experience, mentally tough people can overcome the ups and downs while forging forward towards a goal. And this is, again, going to map to more than just the gym. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, the gym and what we do in CrossFit can be a microcosm for life. You're super young, you'll learn that. Because I'm sure a lot of you know, like, life's gonna punch you in the mouth way more than workouts in the gym are. And so being able to use this as a mechanism to learn these things, when you hit things that are super hard outside of the gym, you can then use those for those things as well. So I know this is like a super deep topic, but it's one that I'm super passionate about because of the fact that I've seen, like, one of my biggest things in athletics was seeing people with like a ton of physical talent go unrealized because they're just mental midgets. And it like irked me to my core. And so this is why this is super important to me.
Chris, how do you think about this kind of thing? This is the macro level, at the micro level within an individual training session.
Yeah, good question. So I use it a lot with my athletes when someone is feeling super beat up, or, I have without using names, I have an athlete right now prepping for quarterfinals who December lost her father. Then her husband had Achilles surgery, so she was, basically caretaking because he was on like one of those wheelie, scooters. And then right before the Open, her mother went into the hospital. I personally, maybe this is being bad coach, cannot look at a woman like that in the face and be like, bro, why are you missing your sessions, right? And so being able to take someone like that who wants to do well in the sport and has athletic endeavors and knows she's missing things because of outside circumstances, I can't tell you how many times I said, hey, what can we do to get 1% better today? And maybe that's going into the gym, and maybe that's just doing some easy cardio to relieve some stress. Maybe that's taking the day off because your body's feeling beat up, or your anxiety and stress is at a 10. Or maybe it's, I feel good, so let's push the envelope a little bit further than maybe the training session dictates. I think that's a lot of things I would look at on a day-to-day basis. Another thing I would look at is like recognizing where your mental and physical space is at going into the gym. And so if you have a 2-hour session, but you had a really rough day at work or a really rough day with family, and you need to take 15 minutes of that session to get into a better headspace, I'd rather you do that and us cut something from that session physically so that you can get an hour and a half of solid work instead of 2 hours of crap that did nothing for you. Because I know that's happened to me. So those are things I would look to do on a daily basis. And I don't know how many of you guys are parents as well, but the book Mindset also gets into parenting tactics on how to put some of this stuff into your kids, which for me and where I'm at in my life is super, super important for me, because when my kids are 8 and 5, stakes are so low, right? Like being able to teach them these tactics when my son comes in last in an 8-year-old track meet versus like, yeah. And I'll tell you what, guys, I don't think he'll ever watch this. It happens quite a bit, but where I'm really proud of him is the last 2 practices he's been at. My wife came back like he left everything on that track, and that's stuff that's gonna map to life, which is super important to me.
One of the things with that too, and we were actually just talking about this, is for him, and we have a daughter, when they were younger, just seeing how their parents respond to things like that.
Yeah.
So like, he's always been around the gym because of me, and then she started a little bit later, but he's seen her whole journey. So like, how we respond to a bad training session, or like when I would compete, when she would compete, how we respond to those. I feel like even though you don't realize when they're at a young age, they're watching you, and then they're actually starting to develop a similar mindset a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like another thing, to go back to your question, that I've noticed for me personally, and more so recently, is being more present and focused within your training.
For sure.
To pick up on those, to where like, you would know when you train on your own and like you're running an affiliate or a gym and you have this by you and you get a text message that has nothing to do with your training, and then you go pick it up and then you're trying to respond. The more that that could wait, like I'm not going to lose a lead or a member for not responding for an hour and a half, and being more focused and present in what I'm doing, to have more of a positive mindset.
For sure.
I guess like as a coaching high level athletes, like when it's a bad training day, like how do you mentally like coach them through either during it or at the end of it? Because like not every training session is going to be great, but
sure.
How do you take get them to think more of the positive?
So the first question I always ask when someone says it was a bad training day is, why was it a bad training day? Like what made it bad? Because now I get to start to frame like why they use that term. Is it because you missed your lifts today? Okay. And then learning, and then trying to walk through, okay, hey, you thought it was a bad training session because you missed your lifts. Did anything positive happen in this training session? See if there's anything positive they could pull out of the training session. And then if there really isn't, okay, well, what could we learn from that? Oh, well, I felt really, I didn't sleep well the night before and had a super stressful day at work. Okay, got it. Then do you really think going into the gym and how did you feel warming up? Super stiff, sluggish. Okay. Do you really think snatch singles at 88% were in the cards for the day? No, I don't. Right, so what could we have done next time so you're able to pull something positive out of that training session, even though you felt so terrible going in, right? And then training, because at the end of the day, especially with what Ben and I do, we're not with you guys on a daily basis. And so much of, well, he might be with some of you guys actually on a nearly daily basis, but I know for my athletes, I'm not. Like I coach an athlete in Louisiana. I even coach some athletes at home, but being that we have 6 locations, like I might not be at that location the same time they're looking to work out. And so being able to take ownership over your training, to warm up, start to hit your warm up snatches, and then being like, woof, like this is no bueno, and saying, okay, you know what? Based on what Ben has told me or what Chris has told me, I'm gonna lower the percentages, find one that on a scale of 1 to 10, an RPE, rate of perceived exertion, feels what an 88% snatch should feel like, and then work on maybe some cues that he's given me. So maybe Ben's worked with you and said, you know, in your snatch, you don't quite get to full extension, and so you're doing your snatches and you're like, you know what, 150 feels like my 88% today. I'm gonna stay at 150, I'm gonna try to hit every snatch, and I'm gonna make it work on that full extension. And then also it involves a conversation with your coach, because there's also days I know for my athletes where I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but you actually should feel really crappy today.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I was gonna jump in and say, like, I think great athletes, they put it back onto circumstance and like the situation that they're in, rather than like their self-worth or like their ego.
Yes.
So like, it's not that I'm bad at snatches. Like I was carrying a little extra fatigue today because I just did a bunch of other work. Like, and that could just be the reality. And that maybe just an off day, and that could be true too.
Sure.
But they probably aren't gonna chalk it up to like, oh, I'm bad at snatches because this is just not going well right now.
Right.
It's, man, this didn't go great today. Wonder why? Like,
You subscribe to the 1/3 rule. Training is 1/3 good, 1/3 okay, and 1/3 crappy.
I mean, it could be. I don't really, I try not to even think of it that way.
Okay.
I really try to think of it as like, well, I'm not going to just say, well, 1/3 of my days are going to be bad.
I was gonna say, I feel like where maybe that's a helpful conversation is for more of a novice.
Yeah.
Like, they come in, they're like, man, I didn't feel great today. Well, no, not every day's gonna feel great.
Right.
Or you're just not doing that much.
Yeah. But I mean, before a more advanced athlete, I feel like bringing it down to the minutia of like, what was today and what can we and what can we take away? Exactly. What can we take away from today? Like I heard in a podcast one time that they found that the people who got through BUDS, so I don't know if you're familiar with BUDS, but it's like Navy SEALs training, they don't sleep like at all for like a week. The people who were super successful when they're doing bear crawls for a mile on the beach is they're focused on the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And then the people who are focused on the fact that they're a quarter mile into the mile end up quitting. Yeah. And so being able to just zone in, kind of like you said, being present in like, where am I at right at this second, instead of being like, I have so far to go to the goal, that's daunting. But like doing this back squat is much less daunting.
And now, been on the Berkeley's, right?
That's right.
Oh, I really should have had like a lamp right here. The Berkeley's are here.
Got the name. Yeah.
With like the Halloween music.
Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just started listening to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while, I would encourage you to rate and review the show. And lastly, the best thing that you can do to support our work is also the best thing that you can do for your performance. And that is by hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.